Hi, I'm Paul Edwards, author of the Mourner's Woods books, and first and foremost, a monster kid. Tonight I'm watching Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla from 1974. In 1954, Toho Studios made the first Godzilla film, in which Godzilla was a terrifying metaphor for nuclear destruction. Over the course of 20 years worth of sequels, Godzilla changed a lot. By 1974, by the time that this 20th anniversary was coming up, Godzilla had become the good guy in his own franchise. He was sort of a monster superhero whose job was to defend the Earth against any monsters that came from outer space to attack us. And Godzilla was still awesome, but he wasn't scary anymore because he was on our side. Toho Studios wanted to make Godzilla scary again for this 20th anniversary movie, but they still wanted him to be the good guy. They wanted to have their cake and eat it too. They wanted to have their Tokyo and eat it too. So they came up with Mechagodzilla. What happened was that space aliens who wanted to conquer the Earth built a robot doppelganger of Godzilla, same size as him, covered it with makeup so that it looked like Godzilla, and sent it on a rampage across the Japanese countryside. And of course, Godzilla showed up and at first believed for a minute that this was another one of his kind, but then quickly discovered, along with the rest of the world, that this was not a living thing at all. It was a machine. And Godzilla had a tough time fighting against Mechagodzilla. He lost round one pretty quickly, but with the help of an ally monster named King Caesar, protector of the Okinawan royal family, Godzilla won round two against Mechagodzilla and destroyed it. So Toho did get to have their cake and eat it too in this film, because when Mechagodzilla was on the rampage, disguised as Godzilla, you got to see some old school Godzilla destruction scenes where Godzilla was trampling the countryside and terrorizing everybody. But there were a couple of clues that the filmmakers put in so that kids in the audience would know this wasn't really Godzilla. They changed the color of Godzilla's radioactive fire breath from blue to yellow. And they changed Godzilla's roar so that it sounded nothing like the well-known Godzilla sound effect. So kids watching in the theater could think to themselves, that's not Godzilla. But I'm not too sure that they really needed to put clues in there, because they were already calling the film Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla. So that tells you right in the title that there's going to be a robot double of Godzilla. So I'm not sure how they thought they were going to keep secret the fact that this was not the real Godzilla. Anyway, Mechagodzilla returned in the first sequel to this film, Terror of Mechagodzilla, which was actually a better film, but unfortunately was the end of the initial run of Godzilla films. And the next time Toho Studios made a Godzilla film, it was the film that was released here in the United States as Godzilla 1985. They rebooted the franchise and took things into different directions and ignored every previous Godzilla film except for the 1954 original. So they erased from history all of the continuity of the Showa film series. So Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla was near the end of Godzilla's initial run of films. It was a pretty good enemy for him to have to go up against, and he certainly had his work cut out for him going against Mechagodzilla. In the sequel, he didn't even have an ally. Instead, he had a second bad monster that he also had to fight, Titanosaurus. But, of course, he prevailed anyway. Now, Mechagodzilla has returned over the past 50 years since this film has come out. But his origin has been changed. In the 1990s, in the Millennium film series, and even in the American legendary MonsterVerse films, all of these have a version of Mechagodzilla, but in every case, it's a man-made artifice. It has nothing to do with space aliens designing a giant death robot. They're all the product of human creation, all the Mechagodzillas that we've seen since the first one. And I'll leave it to you to decide which version of Mechagodzilla you like best. In fact, feel free to let me know in the comments. For me, there's nothing like the old school Mechagodzilla, the one built by the space aliens, and he is not our design, and he is not our friend. I was a little skeptical when they made Mechagodzilla supposedly on our side in the 1990s. And the films with Kiryu Mechagodzilla, the Millennium films, were, in my view, just kind of weird. I don't know what to think of the Mechagodzilla version we got in Godzilla vs. Kong. It certainly looked very little like the classic steampunk Mechagodzilla that we're used to. But let me know in the comments what you think of that. Which Mechagodzilla is your favorite? Meanwhile, if you enjoy classic monsters and vintage horror, check out my book series, the Mourner's Woods books. I'm self-published on Amazon. Basically, I write books for people who like monster movies. That's what it is. So I'll drop a link to my books in the description for this video. Thanks for letting me talk to you some about Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla. I'll see you in Mourner's Woods.